So my new favourite book ever. Can I say ever? Probably. Hello my loves, thank you for joining me. It's Kirsten and today we are doing my August reading wrap up. Overall it's been a really good month. I will say most of my reading was done at the start of the month because I had a couple of weeks off work, and then the last 2 weeks of the month I've not read anywhere near as much. I'm actually still in the middle of 2 books which I will talk about, and I will be finishing them up at some point in September. That's why I wasn't trying to rush to get them done for this video, because I don't know when they're going to get finished, to be quite honest. With that out the way, let's get straight into all the books that I've read in the month of August, and please, as always, let me know, what did you read in August? What was your favourite book? Let me know in the comments below, but let's start off with the books I'm in the middle of. So first of all, we have the short story collection for the month, which was Mary Shelley's Transformation, and I feel kind of gutted that I didn't finish this because there were only 3 short stories in here, and I have read 2 of them. So I have the last one, The Evil Eye, to finish out, and this one was the longest one at just under 40 pages long, which isn't long, but I just haven't got around to it. I've been honestly a bit lazy in the last couple of weeks. I could definitely have squeezed it in. I just didn't because I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing instead in the last couple of weeks. It is good, I'm liking this. I really wanted to read more of Mary Shelley's works this year. I haven't done a massive amount of that, which I had hoped to do. Mary Shelley is the author of Frankenstein, but she's also done a lot of other things. In particular, a book that I really loved by her is L'Adore, which I thought was fantastic and one that really isn't talked about. So I did want to read more Mary Shelley than what I have done this year, but I'm pleased that I've at least started this short story collection. It's good, it's gothic, I'm enjoying them. The first 2, Transformation and The Mortal Immortal, were very interesting looks at humanity, the way our hubris can influence things. I thought it was very good. I really enjoyed it. So we'll be finishing off this in September. And then the other book I'm currently in the middle of is Authority by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the second book in the Southern Reach series, which I'm currently reading on Libby. And I have been reading this really slow because I'm reading it on Libby, because I only have the Libby app on my phone, and I find that I'm not enjoying reading on my phone lately, so I haven't been focusing on this book as much. It is a good book, I do enjoy it. I think I'm up to chapter 11 now, so I think I'm about halfway through this book. A really interesting continuation of the first book, but where the first book focuses on this research team going into the area that has been, it's like an environmental disaster that's happened that's been sealed off, known as Area X, and they've been sending expeditions into this area. The first book, you are part of one of those expeditions. When you're reading it, you're seeing that, and then in the second book you're actually seeing someone from the outside within the Southern Reach organization, and he's just stepped into the role of director, and I'm enjoying it. It's very weird dystopian sci-fi, but I like it. Like, it's a really unusual book. It makes you question everything that's happened in the first book. You can't trust it. You can't trust the narrative that you're being told because everything gets warped slightly and you don't know why. You also don't know why this phenomenon's happened, how it started, what caused it. Like, we have no answers, but it's kind of what I love about this book, is the fact that it's so ambiguous. So yeah, we'll be continuing on with this, but it's going to be a slow read because I'm not at work again for a couple of weeks. I'm actually going on holiday in 2 days time. I don't know when I'm going to get back to reading this one, but my goal is to finish it in September. I personally think I would be much further along in this book and probably would have finished it if I had a physical copy instead of reading it on my phone. But yeah, it's just, I'm just not enjoying reading on my phone at the minute, which is a shame because Libby is an amazing app and it's great, but yeah. Okay, so that's those. Now let's get into the ebooks that I finished. So actually, you know what? Continuing talking about the fact that I've not been enjoying reading on my phone, I have Adventures of Amina El-Sharafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This was the Discord book club pick for the month of August. Every single month in Discord we have a book club pick. Feel free to join if you want. It is free and it's always linked below. And I enjoyed this book, but again, this is one that I'd got out from Libby and I just couldn't get into it reading on my phone, especially because I was reading this during my time off. And I don't mind reading on my phone if I'm on a lunch break at work, if I'm actually out and about somewhere, because it's an easy pick up and put down. However, being at home and reading on my phone, I don't like to do. I would much rather read it on my Kindle, which is what I ended up doing. I ended up purchasing a copy on Kindle to actually be able to finish out this book. This is a really fun seafaring fantasy adventure following Amina, who is in her 40s. She has a child. She is a retired pirate. However, someone pulls her out of retirement, making an offer she simply cannot refuse. Things go from there. Honestly, this book took some turns I was not expecting. I felt like this book was pretty predictable up until the halfway point, and then past that halfway point, I could not have expected any of the things that happened. I loved all the different things that it was combining. This is the start of a trilogy, and I just thought it was so much fun. I really enjoyed Amina as a character, as well as her poisoner. Oh, loved her poisoner. She was amazing. The ship's navigator, and trying to get the crew back together after 10 years of retirement, and all the different things that they were facing as a result. The start of it was a bit slow, I will say. I mean, adding in the fact that I was reading on my phone, so I was feeling a bit disconnected, I still think the first 100 pages were a bit slow, because you were mainly just, well, meeting your characters. None of them were actually on the ship at this point, so you had to then go to different locations, collect her crew. But once it got going, it was really good. So I'm really pleased with this one. Also, it's not a book I would have read if it wasn't for Discord, which happens a lot, so I'm really happy with the picks that we get. Then we have a book that I read for my summer thriller reading vlog for the month, and that was Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. This is a book that I picked up because of Christina, and also Gabby really liked it, and I also really enjoyed this one. Again, another one that was a bit of a slow start. It was very intricately done. So we're following these 3 women, and they were all at the same foster home. What has recently happened is a body has been found underneath the foster home, and now we're looking into the past of these girls. They're being called to the police station to go through some questions and things, and it's a really hard-hitting topic because it does talk about the foster care system, how broken it can be. It also looks a lot at child abuse and the different forms that comes in, so it's not an easy book to read, but I thought it was really well done, and each sister felt so individual. And what I loved that Sally Hepworth did, it wasn't just focusing on the past, the foster home, what they'd gone through, but it was also looking at them as women now, the things that they are struggling with. Each of them has something different that they're trying to tackle in their lives, just like everybody. We all have something that's going on in our lives that we're trying to work through, and I really liked that. So I like well developed all the characters were, and I also really appreciated how everything in this book wrapped up really, really well. I think it was such a good book where everything in this book had a point, and I really liked that. So yeah, definitely an author I would like to check out more from. And then lastly, for the ebooks, I read A Song for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is a cute, cozy sci-fi. It's just a little novella, and I loved this. This one I did actually read on Libby, and I was fine with it, but I think because it was very short, and so it still took me a few days to read, but it's a short book, so it didn't matter as much. But it was really good, really cute and cozy. We have this world called Pangaea, which humans are living on because they have, of course, destroyed Earth, but they have finally learned to live with nature, which is absolutely lovely. But we're following this tea monk who doesn't really know what he wants out of life. He's feeling a little bit lost and not really sure, so decides to become a tea monk, even though never done it before, never practiced it in any way, but gets good at it, and yet still doesn't feel like they quite fit in, and they end up stumbling across a robot. Now, robots became sentient and decided to live away from humans, but Moscap has decided to find out what humans need and see what's going on after all this time. And you just get these 2 characters and their conversations as they make this journey, and it's really lovely and wholesome. It doesn't have a plot really, but it's really nice, and I really liked it. So that was great. Those are all the ebooks. Now let's get to all the physical books that I read, which we read a good chunk, because at the start of this month it was Jan's full moon readathon, which was great. It was a 13-day long readathon, and I read a good amount of books for that readathon. It was definitely helping me get through my TBR for the month. For the readathon, I did read Finley Donovan Knocks Them Dead by Ellie Cosmano. This is the second book in the series. This is kind of like a cozy crime series. It's so much fun and silly and ridiculous. In the first book, we're following Finley, who is, well, she's a writer, but she's not doing that well at the minute. She's kind of struggling for like inspiration. She's also dealing with a divorce and all the problems that come alongside that with 2 young children. And she's meeting up with her editor, who is like, come on, we need a new book. And she's just like, but I'm bored of killing people off in the same way, because she is a mystery romance author. And this gets overheard by somebody who gets the complete wrong impression and thinks that Finley is a hit woman. And in this book, we're seeing the consequences of that first book and all the silly shenanigans. I will say this book is nowhere near as funny as the first book. I feel like a lot of this kind of ended up being predictable in its humor, a little bit more forced in its humor, but I did kind of like it still. Like, I still had a really good fun time with it. I did annotate it. I had one tab for funny moment, another tab for foreshadowing, because Finley is a writer, how the book that she's writing is kind of foreshadowing what's going to happen in here. And then the last one was to do with the actual crime mystery that's going on. It was a lot of fun. I actually really like this series. I was hesitant going into this one because I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about this book, but I still liked it. It's not as good as the first book, I can agree with that, but for me, I went into this just wanting an easy, fun read, and that's exactly what I got, so I was very happy with this. For the same readathon, I read Death Comes to Marlowe by Robert Thorogood, and I loved this so much. Oh, I love this so much. I thought this was fantastic. I only used 2 tabs. One was for facts and clues of the case, and then the other ones were suspicions, and I loved it. It was so much fun. So this is the second book in a series. I actually did quite good at continuing series. I'm actually impressed with myself, because that is normally unheard of for me. But yes, second book in a series, and this one we're following Judith. Judith is a crossword maker, but in the first book she overhears a gunshot, and it's to do with her neighbour, and she's convinced he's been shot. So she rings the police, and they're like, there's probably nothing. They don't find anything, and Judith is like, well, I'm gonna have to find this all for myself, because you're clearly not doing it. She then comes across the dead body, rings the police again, going, I told you. And then they're like, oh no, but it must have been a suicide. And she's like, no, it wasn't. I heard a gunshot. The mystery goes from there. We get a couple of other characters that are kind of pulled along for the ride. It's really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. And the same with this one. We have another situation that Judith ended up being a part of, with the police thinking, nah, it's not really a murder. It's just a really bad accident, and she's like, for God's sake, listen to me. It's so much fun. I consider this a cozy murder mystery. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. It gave me all the cozy vibes that I really wanted, and we do have our amateur detectives getting involved when they really shouldn't be, but it was just a lot of fun and I thought it was great. Okay, continuing another series, although I decided to DNF this series, and that is The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. This is the second book in the Vampire Chronicles series, the first one starting with Interview with the Vampire, and I adored that book. It became my favourite book of all time, or at least one of them. Like, it was absolutely fantastic. I adored it so much, and I was really excited to continue on with this one, although a little bit nervous because some people had said it's not as good as the first book. I can agree with that, and I think you can tell from the tabs where I just started losing interest. This book, it started out really good because Anne Rice's writing is beautiful. I really like the lyrical, decadent writing style that Anne Rice has. However, this was too long. Honestly, if we had got rid of like 200 pages of this book, I probably would have loved it. Really focusing in on this point of Lestat feeling like there is no point to life, and how being a vampire doesn't change that, and instead he now deals with the moral conundrum of being a good vampire means that he's a bad person, which he doesn't want to be. And you have this different conundrum. And yes, there are tie-ins to the first book, which I appreciated, but a lot of this I just didn't really care for. I thought it was too drawn out. Some things that went on, I was a bit like, ew, why? And I get why it was put in there to prove, you know, how different vampires are to humans. They're now vampires, they're not humans, they're not bound by our moral constraints and stuff, but it was still very much an icky situation. So yeah, unfortunately I'm not going to be carrying on with this series. I'm debating whether to unhaul this book, to be honest, because it depends whether I can see myself rereading this one in future or whether I'm just going to stick to Into the Vampire and keep it as a standalone and reread that book, because I definitely will. There's definitely more that I want to pull out from that book that I think was fantastic. It just didn't really work for me on this one, which is a shame, but it's just the way it is. But you know what? Third book continuing a series. That was all this. Oh no, I did do some more series continuation. Told you, run for a roll. Actually, let's skip to that, shall we? The next series I continued, and the final one, 4 for me in 1 month. That's really good. I was actually reading this one, Moriarty the Patriot Volume 3, for my Relax and Readathon, which is a 24-hour readathon that I host bi-monthly, and the emphasis is just to take a self-care day. That is the main thing, but we might as well read while we're at it. However, if you don't get any reading done during that time, it's really not the issue. Like, it's the point of being self-care, chill, relax, do what you want. I was actually very productive in this readathon and got quite a bit read, including Moriarty the Patriot. This is a series I've been really excited to continue. This is inspired by Sherlock Holmes, and we are following Professor Moriarty when he was younger, when he started to become Sherlock Holmes' nemesis, and the reason why he's doing the things that he's doing. I really like it. I think it's really fun and interesting. This particular episode volume got really dark, but I really loved it. So yeah, loved this. Thought it was fantastic. Really excited to continue on with this series, and realised I actually have 4 more volumes on my shelf, so that's amazing. I will definitely be doing that. Okay, so also for the readathon I read Goblin Market by Christina Rossetti. This is a tiny little collection of poems from Christina Rossetti, but the main reason why I picked it up is for Goblin Market, and I loved this poem. I did try a couple of the other poems in here, didn't get on with them. Poetry is not really my thing. However, when it comes to epic poetry, I actually quite like it. Goblin Market for me felt like an epic poem because it was telling this story just done in verse, and it was so good. I loved it. I loved seeing the connections to things that what this has inspired in so many books, and that is why I loved it so much. I thought it was really well done. Would highly recommend this book if you're interested in where the Goblin Market kind of comes from and the different literature it's inspired. Like, I think you'll be able to pick up on quite a lot, which one of those it's inspired is actually Lani Taylor. So I did finish this short story collection, which is Lips Touch. I only had 1 short story left to go for this, which was Hatchlin. Goblin Market reminded me of Goblin Fruit, which is a little short story in this collection, and it was like a continuation almost from Goblin Market, because the 2 sisters in Goblin Market were our main characters, like Nan and Great Aunt. It was really good. It was absolutely fantastic. It got me wanting to read Lani Taylor's writing after reading Goblin Market, and I'm really pleased I did that. I love Lani Taylor's writing, and as much as this is a young adult short story collection, I just think the writing's so good that it doesn't matter. In this one, we're actually looking at changelings and the Fae in that way, and it was just so good. I really enjoyed it. I love this little short story collection. It's really good. If you haven't read it but you like Lani Taylor, definitely give it a try. Both of those were part of the 24-hour readathon. I then have Yona of the Dawn Volume 1, which is a book I picked up because of Katie. I'll have her channel linked below. She loves this series, although recently she's been continuing on with this series but hasn't loved it as much as the start. I loved this. This was really good. This is one that I was a bit hesitant to go into because my manga tastes tend to go towards slightly more darker, like Promised Neverland, Moriarty the Patriot, that sort of thing. So I wasn't sure how I would feel about more of a historical romance, but actually I loved this. This was fantastic. We're following Yona, who is a princess, and on, I think it's her 16th birthday, her father gets murdered and she goes on the run with her bodyguard Hack along with her. It's really good, really emotive. I loved the storyline. At the start of this, Yona is a very kind of vapid, self-indulgent princess, but of course she's going to be. She's a teenager. I would expect nothing less. And so I'm really intrigued to see how the events, how all of that's going to change her as a person. So I'm very much looking forward to continuing on with this series. So yeah, that was fantastic. I think, was that everything? I feel like I'm missing a book. What else did I read for the readathon? Oh, right, I put it on the pile already. So for Jan's readathon, the last book that I read for the readathon was Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Lafano. This is a book I've already read, but I wanted to pick up this specific edition because this one's edited by Carmen Maria Machado, and I wanted to pick up this specific one because of that. This is beautifully illustrated. I absolutely love it. Let me show you. It is gorgeous. It's got beautiful illustrations and it has little footnotes that have been edited by Carmen, and I really love this one. I picked this one up specifically for Jan's readathon because, well, Jan loves vampires, so of course I had to, but I'm really pleased that I finally got around to reading this. So yes, it was kind of a reread for me in the sense that I've read Camilla already, but I also loved the extra editions and the extra way of looking at things that Carmen added in, which I really appreciated. So yeah, if you don't know what this one is about, I should say this is the vampire book that came out before Dracula. It is a lot easier to read than Dracula, so if you are a little bit nervous because it's a classic, I would say still give it a try. It's a short little book and it's actually very accessible, but it's basically about lesbian vampires, which I know some people can debate the lesbian part of this. The first time I read this book, it felt very much sapphic vampires to me, and Carmen's notes show that she very much agrees with that. And yeah, I mean, it basically is gay vampires. It was a lot of fun. The last 3 books to read, 1 is a new all-time favourite book and 2 were kind of letdowns in a way. So let's start off with the new all-time favourite. So my new favourite book ever, can I say ever? Probably. Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Darst. I loved this, and honestly I'm surprised because I did go into this with some reservations because Sarah Beth Darst is an author I have read one of their books before from, and it was fine, but it was definitely not like something I decided to continue on with. This, however, was fantastic. I loved this. I read this for my pilot episode of the new series that I'm doing, which is reading new cozy releases. They can be across different genres, and I had a poll up in Discord for the very first episode because I knew I'd only be able to fit in 1 book, and this is the one that won for that, and I adored it. I fell in love with this book so much. It was just everything I want a cozy fantasy to be. It was honestly like Sarah Beth Darst just looked into my brain and saw what 10-year-old Kirsten would have loved to have had in a book and put it all on the page, but made it adult fantasy, and it was just so good. So in this book we're following Kaz, a spider plant, love, and the main character Kyla, I really do have trouble pronouncing her name, who is a librarian, and there is this big revolution going on, and we meet her at the start where the library is on fire, and so she is escaping with some spell books which she's not allowed to do, and she doesn't know where to go, and so decides, you know what, I'm gonna go back home. So she goes back to her island where she was born, which her parents then left to give her more opportunities out of life. It's just a wonderful, lovely little cozy tale about this community coming together, about how magic has been hoarded by those in power. It has a lot of social commentary about that, and it was just absolutely wonderful. Absolutely beautiful. I loved this book so much. It's going to be my top of the year. It's going to be a top of all time. I can't wait to reread it, probably annotate it at some point. This is going to become my cozy book to read if I'm not feeling great, or basically it's just a book I'm going to reread continuously because I loved it so much. I wish we had more in this world, but it is just a standalone. Whether she decides to do more going forward, I don't know, but it was wonderful and exceeded my expectations, so I'm very happy with that. Time for the last 2 books, and both of these had really good premise. I just ended up not enjoying them as much as I'd hoped. So first of all we have Hera by Jennifer Saint. Now there's nothing wrong with this book per se because Jennifer Saint, wonderful writing, so the writing style of this was beautiful, really enjoyed that. This is a Greek mythology retelling of Hera. It's more historical based. My problem with this one is it felt so kind of boring in a way, but frustrating, and it's following the timeline of the Greek gods. So we see them at the very start when they're taking over the Titans, and it follows them through different mythology, different big events that happened, and then finishing with them petering out and no longer being the Olympic gods that we know from myth. But at the same time, because it's such an overview of everything, nothing was done in depth. I kind of get it, because for Hera, she was always a part of everything, but also not a big part of anything. You get her frustration in the role that she's been relegated in. You see the reason why she's seen as this vindictive goddess, and you can really understand it, really feel for her. I did have sympathy for her situation, but I just found that I wanted more. I was kind of hoping we would get a situation, like a myth maybe that was lesser known about Hera that we would hyper focus in on, but that just didn't happen. Instead, we got an overview of Hera across the ages, and we saw different mythology tales that are happening that Hera saw, because obviously she is the queen of the gods and goddesses, so she saw all of it but wasn't fully a part of any of it in a way. So yeah, I feel like this book got a little bit repetitive in nature, and it just kind of ended up being a, oh, okay then, fair enough. Like, it's not a bad book. I would say if you liked Circe by Madeline Miller, this kind of gave me a similar feel to Circe, in the sense that Circe was relegated to her island and so had to see all of these things happening around her but couldn't directly be a part of any of it. And Hera feels the same way, in that all of these things are happening but she chooses not to be a direct part of any of it, and it's like weird. Or that when she is a direct part, it's kind of glossed over because the time scale of this is massive, so it's kind of like we get little snippets here and there. So I think it was done interestingly. I liked the depictions of Hera and seeing how removed she is, how she views things in a different way to how we would, so I appreciated all of that. It's just, it didn't quite mesh with me. I definitely think out of the books that I've read by Jennifer Saint, this is probably my least favourite. So yeah, I was just a little bit let down. Like, there's nothing wrong with this, I just wanted something different from the story. But I would still recommend giving it a read, especially if you are interested in Greek mythology. This will give you a good overview, and if there's particular mythology that was mentioned that you want to know more of, you can then go and find those. But yeah, just not quite what I wanted. And then lastly, we have Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. This was the other book that I read for the summer thriller reading vlog, and I started out loving this book. Like, a lot. I was really enjoying it. I was really happy with the direction it was going. It felt a little bit paranormal leaning, atmosphere that was keeping me feeling a little bit creeped out, which I really enjoyed. Then things happen and it all just kind of went, well, there was not much point to that. It was almost like Riley Sager changed his mind at the very end of this book, at the direction it was going in and all the things it had led up to, and just went, nah, actually we're going to do this instead. And it was such a letdown. It was such a shame. Like, I liked the start of this a lot. It just then didn't go anywhere, and I didn't even mind the fact that it was slow. Like, I actually didn't mind that this was a slow build up. It just didn't go anywhere. But I should probably say what it's about. So I mean, this book's been around a lot on YouTube, but in case you don't know, this is about Ethan. When Ethan was 10 years old, he was having a sleepover in his tent in the garden with his best friend Billy, and when he wakes up in the morning, there is a knife slash through the tent and Billy is missing. Fast forward 30 years, Ethan is now back at his parents' house and he feels like Billy's there, like he hasn't been able to let go of what happened, and he just wants to know what happened to Billy, what happened those 30 years ago. And that is the story that we're finding out, and it is such a shame that it just petered out because there was so much potential. Never mind. But that is it. That's all the books that I read in the month of August. Like I say, I had such a strong start to this month. It was amazing. And then towards the end, it's kind of petered out a little bit, but that's fine. I'm not bothered about that. I think I had a great reading month overall, even with a couple of books that I'm just like, weren't quite as good. Overall, the month has been great. Thank you for watching. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought about any of these, and again, what did you read in the month of August? Please let me know in the comments below. But if you've made it this far and you just don't know what to comment, then you can always leave a house emoji, because that's the last cover I showed and there is a house on it. So we can do that in the comments below if you've made it this far, you just don't know what to comment. And thank you so much for watching. I know I say it all the time, but truly I appreciate each and every single one of you that takes the time to watch these videos. It really means the world. So if you have enjoyed this video, then please do consider giving it that thumbs up, subscribing, commenting. Those 3 things really help this channel out. My social media links and anyone I've mentioned will be linked below for you, and I will of course catch you in the very next video.